So the article is on the multilateralism and relevance of global multilateral institutions like United Nations. It is written in the context of 80th anniversary of United Nations to be celebrated on 24th October in New York, where United Nations General Assembly is situated. The current world order is facing several crises. For example, crisis in Palestine, crisis in Sudan, crisis in Ukraine, which shows the need of multilateral cooperation and also the failing of multilateral institutions like United Nations. There are striking signs which shows the fraying of United Nations. For example, US has withdrawn from the key global bodies like UNHRC and UNESCO and has slashed its funding to other, including an estimate 80% reduction in contribution to United Nations programs. Also, there are several intrinsic faults in the structure of United Nations and its bodies. For example, veto power in Security Council on the issues like Gaza, which has revoked visas of Palestinian officials to the United States, and conflicts in Ukraine, where Russia has vetoed the resolutions in United Nations Security Council. So, in this context, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called three global crises. First, accelerating climate change. Second, deepening inequalities. And third, disruptions by evolving technology, which is outpacing the governance structure, as three global crises. And the major reason he has highlighted is the geopolitical divides our world is facing right now. So the relevant question is multilateralism on the verge of collapse? There are signs, there are reasons which can make us believe, but the most relevant question and the first question, basic question, is what is multilateralism? Multilateralism is the belief that global problems, which to which United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan called problems without passports, require global solutions, negotiated through institutions that give voice to all the nations regardless of size or power. It is a system built on sovereign equality, mutual respect, and rule of law. United Nations General Assembly, where each of the 193 member states cast one vote, remain the most visible embodiment of this ideal. But there are intrinsic issues in United Nations structure, as we say, Security Council veto power, which enshrines inequality and is reflection of a world order of 1945. There has been rise of global rising superpowers, for example, Brazil, Germany, Japan, India, Australia, which are not given equal voice and equal space in these councils. Also, the United Nations General Assembly is often seen as a forum for posturing rather than problem solving. But one cannot neglect the achievements which United Nations has achieved in the last 80 years journey. For example, it has laid down global norms and the global humanities vision for future, in terms of UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Climate Agreement, which have all emerged from the multilateral process, which have been agreed by humanity for the humanity. United Nations has coordinated humanitarian reliefs, led successful peacekeeping missions, and helped concluding the dozens of international treaties and promoted global health responses. But one can not neglect the rise of bilateral arrangements as a challenge to multilateral global order. For example, US-China rivalry has cast a long shadow, with both powers increasingly pursuing bilateral or minilateral arrangements. Also, the ruthless defiance of the international norms by Russia in Ukraine and Israel in Gaza has further undermined the credibility of these global institutions. Additionally, Europe, which was once a bastion of multilateralism and global cooperation, shows currents of nationalist governments and ultra-nationalist far-right regimes who put sovereign national interest much over the global cooperation. But our writer argues that multilateralism is only wounded and not dead, and the very fact that the world leaders continue to assemble in New York to speak, to negotiate, to deliberate suggests that there is need for global dialogue, which everyone agrees. The UN 80 initiative has been launched this year to streamline the mandates, to cut costs, to restore public trust, which is not no more a luxury rather than a necessity. Uh, so what has to be done is a two step process. First, reforming the institutions, and side by side rebuilding legitimacy. These multilateral institutions have to prove their credibility by delivering tangible benefits in terms of job, security, and dignity of life, and not just laying out abstract norms. It must become these multilateral institutions have to become more empathetic and less technocratic. Uh, the multilateralism we need a model of multilateralism which is principled yet pragmatic, which is inclusive yet effective. Uh, it should be inclusive not only to the voice of rising global powers, but also small nations, the nations of global south. India, in this larger context, has an opportunity to champion a more equitable global order, rooted in the values of sovereignty, solidarity, and sustainable development. So, 3S approach of India: sovereignty, solidarity, and sustainable development. India can contribute its expertise and leadership to global discussions on issues ranging from cyberspace to outer space. In the concluding remarks, it must be understood that United Nations General Assembly uh, might seem to be a fraying body, but it was never created. But in the words of Dag Hammarskjöld, United Nations was never created to take humanity to heaven, but rather save humanity from the hell. This means that United Nations have been unable to do to fulfill its mandate on several occasions, but it still remains the only forum where all nations can come together to address the world problems. Uh, so we need reforms and renewals, and these renewals should begin with the recognition that in an interconnected world, no nation is truly sovereign until all are.